Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Meet the 2020 Company. As you can see, my backdrop has changed. I am no longer in New York City. I am now in beautiful West Virginia, in my wife's home city of Huntington. Nice change of pace, here with the dog, the plants, some in-laws, and a very special guest today, our first non-actor scenic designer, Stephen Hudson-Mariet. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm just fine, thank you. How you doing?
I'm good. You know, all things considered, I'm not in the city. And so some nature, things like that. Nice pool right here to my left. So I'm not going to complain too much. You did something miraculous today. Why don't you tell us what you did before you came to the interview?
Oh, I just did a bike ride today. I rode out to, I live in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, so I rode with my wife out to my parents' house in Waukesha and rode back. It's about just short of a 40-mile bike ride today. So we're in training, we're in training. So
just short of a 40-mile bike ride. I ran out of breath going to get something from the car today. So that's pretty impressive. And you're in my home state, which makes me happy, which is where we met, because you are a professor at Marquette University.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your education, your background, where you're at now, and all the good stuff before we get into all the fun, cool things that designers do.
Cool. Yeah. So I grew up just out in Waukesha. So I'm from Wisconsin. Went to school at Carroll College in Wisconsin. My wife went to this little school out in Michigan called Hope College. And we weren't married at the time.
I forgot completely about that.
Yeah.
I forgot completely about that. I can't believe I forgot that. Awesome plug. Go Hope College.
And the little thing, her picture's on the wall in the library. So, but she doesn't like me to tell people that, so don't tell anybody.
We won't. We have, no one's watching, I promise.
No one's watching. That's great. So we got married. We moved to England for a couple of years because she got a Marshall scholarship, so she's way smarter than I am. But everybody knows that. And we came back to Wisconsin for a couple of years, and then I did graduate school at the University of Kansas. And did from there, got on the kind of academic track, spent a year in Indiana at Earlham College, and then spent a year down in Augusta, Georgia. And right before my daughter was born, we got an opportunity to move back to Wisconsin and got the gig here at Marquette University. And she just turned 20. So I just finished my 20th year at Marquette.
Oh, wow, they grow up quick. And that's why I don't have any. And we worked together when I was, much like Chip the Ford, who was our last interview. You and I worked together in Milwaukee. We worked together at Milwaukee Chamber, and then you brought me in to direct a little show we're going to talk about today at Marquette. And what show is that?
Yes. Yeah, the little show was called Little Women. So,
yes.
And that was that 2 years ago? 2 years ago.
Yeah, Something 2 years ago. It was after my first summer at Hope, because I started recruiting your students almost immediately.
Right.
So,
right, yeah.
Yeah, we did Line in Winter at Chamber Theater.
Yeah, and I worked with Laura in Collected Stories.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot
at Chamber Theater.
Yeah.
I'm quiet. I slide around behind the scenes a little bit.
So. Most designers are, which is why I'm so happy to have you pinned down to talk to you about this. So a lot of people don't understand how much work and how hard it really is as a scenic designer to do what you do. You literally create something out of nothing. So before we get into the cool high-tech stuff that we're really hoping works today, why don't you talk about the process that you go through between first contact, as though you meet the director like we're aliens, because we kind of are, first contact to opening night. What's your process?
So, obviously you start with a script. You always have to start with the play so that you know what the common language is with the director and the rest of the team. And then I like to have like really informal meetings with the director to just kind of get a sense of where they might want to take this, because as a designer, there's all sorts of different ways you might approach a show, and you really want to get a sense of the fiber and the feel of what a director's trying to do with the show. And then from there, part of it is that like I've been an educator all my life, and that's how I start and finish with these sort of things. So I'm going to bring in often a student or a recent alum to work as my assistant, and we're going to start together to try and formulate an idea of what this show is about, depending on what show it is. And so we can talk a little bit about, like in the case of Little Women, when you and I first did it, it was, do we pursue this kind of literariness of it, or what is it about the story that we're telling that we want to highlight? And so then the student and I, or my assistant and I, will go off and do lots of visual research, and we'll spend weeks just kind of compiling a big pile of, well, now it's all digital, of just visual imagery. And in this case, it's Louisa May Alcott, and looking at what does her world look like, and what are some of the textures that you might be able to find, that you might be able to tap into. And then you're going to look at the logistics of the play. So in the case of Little Women, it is a play that works really well when it can move really fast. In between the scenes, you want to have enough time to tell the story, but because it's written like a movie and it moves from place to place to place to place very quickly, you don't want the scenery to get in the way of it. You don't want to break the momentum of the play, I guess is the way.
It almost moves annoyingly fast, the musical. And I don't say that in a negative connotation, but you're like, right. How are we going to do that? Which is why, I mean, and we didn't say this out loud, but I'm pretty sure the audience's powers of deduction have figured out that we brought you in to do Little Women for Hope after we had done it at Marquette, because the set design was brilliant. And how did,
thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And how you were able to achieve that. So I didn't need to interrupt, but that play moves at the speed of light. Like, so continue about like how to move through a play that fast.
Well, and it's true of most modern plays that they move fast. Mm-hmm. And so the aesthetic that is evolving, I think, in American theater, in theater in general, is really being able to tell the story with minimal effects, or with $1,000 bazillion dollars, and you can just recreate each location. So what I really like is finding almost how little can I present physically that will tell the story in that moment, that can move quickly. So I've been told that I'm minimalist. I'm not sure that this is going to land in that world, but there's a simplicity to letting the actors tell the story and getting out of the way. You know, like if you think about with Murder for Two last year. Yeah,
you designed Murder for Two as well. I'm really not plugging you in your resume with Hope as well. I mean, your wife, Hope's grad, and then last year, the amazing set design that was Murder for Two. You know, when I first had the vision of what Murder for Two would be, I was like, piano and a couple guys. And like, no, that was one of the prettiest sets we had all summer. So,
but the thing about Murder for Two is that, like, you think I remember my notes for that one. It was piano, two guys, and a doorway. Like that's what it needed. But the play, that play is so like taking its tongue and jamming it inside of its cheek so hard that you try and find what are the visual, like how do you play that joke up, and how do you just kind of make that world heightened all the way across the board. And so it was really simple. It was just furniture. And
two guys that could just eat scenery. Like it wouldn't have worked with the piano and the door. Between Ben and Paul, you had to have all that, or else it just wouldn't have worked. So I'm glad that you guys ran with it.
Yeah. So then, like, if you think about the process, what then happens is when you then draw up, here's my idea. And so at some point we'll think about, I'll skip to Murder for Two for a second. For Murder for Two, I'm like, I really like this painted backdrop that has this kind of like Clue the movie feel to it. And there's like spooky with clouds and a moon. And we want to paint that, and then we start putting the pieces together. And then the lighting designer comes in and says, well, what if we put chase lights that go all the way around? I'm like, that's cool. And then the tech director says, or Brian, production manager, says, well, we actually could do it faster. Are you any good with projections? And I'm like, I do projections like crazy. And so then all of a sudden that backdrop becomes a whole nother part of the drama that we can, so I think that's the other part that I really like about the process of design is at some point, there's going to be a turning point where there's all these people in the room who will say, well, what about? And how, what if we did this? And if you did that, my costumes could do this. Or the director will say, you know, if you put that here, I can totally use it this way. So you're like, great. And how do we adjust things to work as a collaborative team? So there's no one, like there's no one creator of all this stuff, right? It's how do we provide as many opportunities for people to kind of run with it. So then I'll create physical models. I'll create what we'll show you in a bit, some virtual models to kind of show how this might progress. And I use all sorts of digital tools or traditional models. Just, it kind of depends on how I'm feeling and who the director is and how involved we will be in person. The more the world is moving distance, and it has really gone that way right now, it's how can you share your scenery electronically? And how well do you trust that person on the other end to really understand what you're looking at? So I've done situations where I've created a 3-dimensional white model that's made out of cardboard and has 3D printed furniture. And then I'll do a SketchUp, which is virtual. So the little paper model, the director can actually move things around and say, well, what if we do it this way? How do we arrange parts this way? And then the SketchUp model will allow you to see what it would look like if we made those changes. So then we collaborate, and then I draw up a bunch of stuff using various drafting programs and send it off to the team. And then they, depending on the situation, they will build it, or like back in Marquette, I will build it, or I will be part of the building team. And then we kind of go from there. And you just kind of discover each step of the way. And even when you get into the tech rehearsal, you have to be ready to like embrace new discoveries that will happen in rehearsal.
Well, it's interesting, you know, and this will be a good segue. As I set you up with a question, with a statement that sets up into a question that allows me to set up the tech while you're answering it, for you to do your screen share with us and your virtual tour.
I'll make it a long answer.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll when the camera switches to you, I'll pull on my ear that we're ready. But the interesting thing is for scenic designers, because it's the base, it's what the actors stand on. You know, lighting designers aim things, costume, and I'm not taking anything away from anyone at all. But like, if a costume can't fit through a door, you have a problem. You know, it seems like it always goes, well, what do we do about the door? You know, what do we do this? How do we do this? Scenic always seems to be the one that has to adapt the most. So how I say that, so it leads into, we did Little Women at Marquette, which is a space completely different than the DeWitt Theater at Polk College. How did you go about transferring, because that's, I literally said, I want that set, but here. How did you and Maggie Spanuello, the director, who is also the director for Murder for Two, how did you guys work going from Marquette to the DeWitt?
So there was an element of, again, going backwards into the research to say, these were some of the ideas we had originally, and this is how we got to where we were, because Maggie needs to know how you and I evolved in that process, how we went from point A to point B to C. And then imagery of what we had done. And then there's an element of what did I like and what would I like to have changed. And then the space we were in at Marquette is a really beautiful but pretty standard proscenium space, so that everything basically, I think we had a very small apron. And so everything basically is from the proscenium back. Then from there, so, and in the DeWitt, it's a thrust where everything is in front of proscenium. So it's a matter of what were the pieces that I wanted to keep and what did I want, did I make the changes. And so the play on some level is driven by, there's an element of windows and being able to look through the windows and see what's happening in the world of these people. And so how do I land the windows? And then the other piece that was really important to me was Jo does all her writing, and her safe place in my mind is the attic. And so how do we recreate the attic, and how do we get that to work? And once we can get the attic to work, I think everything flows from there. And so it was making that change. And then it's finding some of the architectural pieces that I liked that I had to transfer to the DeWitt. The couple of things that Maggie wants to do is have the orchestra be really prevalent and prominent. And so we had to find a landing place for the orchestra almost in the house. And that every time you make that one little change, it has a knock-on effect to everything else. So, so it's just kind of like setting the dominoes up and knocking them over. So
well, why don't you show us how you knock the dominoes over? Because I believe the tech is ready to go.
All right, so I just want to hit the share screen here, right?
Let's take a look. Hopefully it works.
Let's see. How's that?
Oh, look at us.
Okay. So, so the play the play starts out in a boarding house, in Mrs. Kirk's boarding house. And can you see my mouse at all?
Yeah.
Or no? Okay. Okay. So the boarding house is set in front of two very large panels that can either fly in and out or slide side to side, depending on how the technology works. And at Marquette, we flew them up and down. They would probably fly up and down at Hope. This little board off to the side was a thought process of do we need to provide some sort of information for the audience to say, this is where we are. When we did it at Marquette, you and I projected that information. So the thought process was that we might put some information here. And then on the stage right side, we created this little stable for the orchestra, and the orchestra would play and live right here. And this would allow Maggie to take players of the orchestra to move out and about. So Mrs. Kirk's boarding house, and we come back and forth to this a number of times during the play. Mrs. Kirk's boarding house really consists of a sofa and a chair. And then they play everything right there. So then, and I think these are in sequential order, but it's okay if they're not. The next kind of view that I had envisioned was the attic. Now, those two giant panels that were there will have flown out. And then this backdrop that I refer to as like the sunburst or starburst, flies in and out, and then the attic platform rolls all the way down, the staircase rolls all the way down, the window flies in, and the rafters fly in. This is really beautiful. I think when COVID struck, I was in the midst of trying to figure out really how big these could be, because I think these were going to cause like detrimental problems for the lighting designer. They were just going to be too big. So we were in negotiations to figure out how much of that I could have so that we could still get the effect, and yet still allow the lighting designer to do their job. So, so this was the attic, and it had lots of little pieces on it that were gonna, be furniture pieces and a chest or something like that. Ooh, that just shot out on me. Sorry about that. We'll go to the next one.
It's still very cool, though, that you can go all the way back. That's exactly what a scenic model looks like, but it's on your computer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That was a very cool accident.
Yeah. So the next scene that creates is the parlor for the March family. The challenge with the thrust is when we played it, is the piano. The piano plays a pretty prominent role in the story of the play. You can't you can't tell this play, you can't tell the story without the piano. And you have to believe that two of the characters are actually playing the piano. So this was going to be an interesting challenge and solution, is to have, because at some point in the play the piano gets swapped out. And so we're going to have to be able to make that piano playable, or at least us believe that someone is playing the piano. In a thrust setting, we kind of voted on the let's put it where someone can play it. So that's where this is going to be, at the corner of the thrust. A sofa, a couple of sittables around the fire, and then that same staircase that came with the attic would then be repurposed to create kind of an entranceway from the upstairs for the girls, or for the whole family, as if that goes off to the rest of the house. And I think we were figuring out which way you would enter and exit this. You could maybe go through the house, or you might go upstage back here. So we're trying to figure that out. 2 different windows, different space. So that was kind of that idea. Joe visits her Aunt March's house just once, I believe. And this has to have a sense of regalness. But again, in this world of simplicity, it was just going to be a window with nicer curtains, a nicer chair, a little end table, and then Joe could come around, do her number with Aunt March, and then dip out. But you can see these side or these back panels give us lots of different kind of visual effects that we can create.
It's interesting what you can do by changing just something slightly. And the human imagination will tell you whatever, will fill in all the holes. And that's what's so amazing, and why I love you as a scenic designer when you worked on our production of A Christmas Carol, how we can make a million looks out of 5 different mobile pieces. So yeah, it's pretty amazing, Stephen.
So here's another one that this is kind of like on some level the biggest transition, and then it's relatively simple. So this is the ball that they attend. And so it's 4 curtains that fly in, 3 windows that fly in, and they have a slightly different texture and a different look to them. We hang 1 chandelier, and then all these chairs that would go around, and then you can have chorus members sitting amongst the chairs, and it feels like a totally different place.
Yep.
And it's just a little bit of change. So, and ideally, this is a point when members of the orchestra could come out and mingle and play as part of the scene. So, so that one, I like that one. Again, it's a simplicity, and yet it's really adds a little complexity. The simplest scene is the beach, which is that sunburst again, and then everything else cleared out except for the wheelchair. And I think we have one more scene, which is there's a scene at the before the wedding or leading into the wedding. And if we could bring in a couple of arbors and hang some lanterns and some flowers, again, it allows the actors to kind of do their thing on the stage and get in and out of the way. So those are the scenes that I had drawn up for SketchUp on SketchUp. And then what's nice is I send this off to Maggie, and I have a model ready to go, or ready to kind of progress, but we kind of hit that pandemic moment where there was nothing else to know where to go with it.
You just kind of hit pause. Everything paused.
We're, as they say, as you said, I think, circling the airport, right? Just pause.
Yeah, we're circling the airport. I will, without saying anything, I would say don't delete or throw anything away. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, in this world of electronic work, you just kind of put everything in your back pocket, and someday it'll come back.
Well, let's put the screen share down, and let's finish up our conversation.
Okay.
Beautiful work. Like I said, you and I have now Little Women, either with me directing or producing, would have been our fourth show, because Little Women in Milwaukee, and then Christmas Carol in New York, and then Murder for Two, and then Little Women Part 2.
Yep.
Joe's Revenge, you know, would have been the fourth time. So I have no doubt that we'll see you at Hope again, as you are one of my A+ designers, you and Sarah Perline. I mean, you can't go wrong with the two of you. So as we round things out, I'm not going to let you off the hook like I did with the actors. So I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions, and you'll give me your answers, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll say bye to everybody, and we'll go back to the pool, to your bike ride, and our lovely summers. Unfortunately, not in Holland.
Yeah.
So here we go. Are you ready, Stephen?
I think so. I think so.
Okay, here we go. Normally it would be dream role, dream set design. What play?
Dream set.
Yeah, what show do you want to get your hands on?
I would love to design anything that Fiasco Theater does out in New York. They are my dream company. I just think they're amazing. It is the idea of minimalism with really intricate and creative work all the way along. Now, I have an alum who works with them regularly, so they have a warm spot in my heart. But anything Fiasco does, I would die for.
They are the kings of using technology and creativity to come together to support the story. I agree with you. I mean, it'd be a dream just to be in the room with them. I'm a big fan of Fiasco. Your favorite set design you've ever done? The one you're most proud of?
I mean, outside of Little Women.
Yeah, I mean, outside of what you and I have worked on together.
Fair enough. That's tough. That's tough. I did a show at Skylight a couple years ago, like 5 years ago. We did My Fair Lady. That was a really amazing experience. A really top-notch team. Dottie Danner was the director. Chris March was the costume designer. A friend of mine from Purdue was the lighting designer, Michael Mcnamara. But it was, again, that idea of a modular piece that kept moving and moving and moving and shaking and creating all the different, it was like 6 or 7 different moving pieces that told the story. And that was a case where, again, I'm dead in the water without their amazing prop team. So like Lisa Schlenker just saved my life on that one. And
yeah,
and it was a lot of work, but it was really, I think, I mean, all the shows are great. So
yeah, well, they're all your children, Mother Courage.
Yeah,
they're all your children.
Yeah.
So normally I would ask an actor, what's your most embarrassing moment? But for you, when did you swing and miss? What set design do you go, oh my gosh, really? That's what I put up there? You don't have to name the company.
I have, it's, I've had things where it's not so much the set design was a swing and miss. It was that the director and I weren't on the same page. And again, not naming names, but, and I've had it probably once or twice in the last 30 years where I can say that was a case where I thought I was explaining everything I needed to do. And the director was like, what is this? Or I thought, like, sometimes you give a really interesting arrangement of things and the director puts everybody on the front and doesn't use it. And you're like, how did I miss that communication?
Yeah.
So, so it's those moments of like, or where you think, oh, I didn't communicate it well enough with the director that it might've been a miss, but
yeah. It's really interesting that you bring that up. Is as an artistic director, when I was coming out of school, I was always like, everybody should give the new actors a shot, or we should, like, everybody, they should want young blood all the time. And that is true. But the very first thing I did when I became an artistic director was hired all my friends.
Right.
Because there's a level of trust. And like you just said, being on the same page with the director is really important, and hiring the right directors to go with the right designers. That's a huge part of my job. And why, everybody's like, you only have like 3 set designers. I go, because we're looking to do a lot in a very short period of time. And then we'll bring in, as our circle grows, we bring in more people. And we bring in young people and we give them opportunity and things like that. But trust is a big issue.
Yeah.
So,
and what I try and do is make sure that every project that I work on, I have a student or an assistant that is someone who I can communicate with, someone who I trust, who is someone who I can introduce to this process so that they can be that young blood. Because really, I've got a day job, right? If you turned around and said, I really think that assistant that you had was fantastic, I'd like to give him or her a shot, like that's great, right? So that's it. So what I try and do in all of my projects, wherever I'm working, is introduce these young artists to those opportunities as well, because that's part of my mission as well. Is that to
and we're
kind of
notorious, and I'm notorious for using. You can ask in New York and in Hope of young people that I've worked with, either coming in and directing at Marquette. How many Marquette kids did we have last year, and how many we were going to have this year too? Right. We had Lindsay, Nick, Krista, Grace. Emily. I mean, we had a slew of them. And that's part of the gig, nurturing the next generation. And a great segue, I think, maybe to our last question is, this would have been your second summer at Hope. So what keeps you coming back? Or what do you like about it? And why do you recommend it to your students?
Yeah, it's, I think it's a good experience. I can speak to the experience that I have, which is one, there's a level of professionalism, certainly with, the whole structure of the technical side, because that's the people that I deal with on the most, that it's a lot of work, but it's my sense is that the students had a really good experience on the whole, that they enjoyed working with each other, and it's an opportunity for you to meet that network of people, to take you to the next step. Like it is like summer stock is hard. You need not to go at it assuming that it will be hard, but it's a lot of hard work to put on that many shows in that amount of time. And how do we make sure that those students can have a healthy experience, but also one that, because here's the thing about summer stock. If you do summer stock and finish a really hard summer and say, I enjoyed that and I want to keep doing that, I think you are in the right place for the profession, which is also very difficult.
Yeah.
And it's a really good place to learn that in the process. And then my job, is to help find those ways to smooth the edges of that hard job, right? So that we're not, because it need not be hard. Doesn't mean abusive, right?
You're exactly right. Hard work, and that's the thing that we have focused on a ton since I've been there, and how we were really looking forward to this year to kind of having mastered the calendar, is hard work is important. This profession is brutal, and it is long hours every day, whether you're working on the clock or off of it. But you need not be working to the point where you're falling over. You need not be working to the point where you don't get a break. That is ridiculous, and that's not fair, and that is abusive. But there is the level of hard work is part of the gig. Cutting your teeth is part of the gig. Networking is part of the gig. And it's very unique. Theater people like that. They love, the reason that I think we find the young people are so, why there's always a line at auditions at our tech table at the conferences is because people are looking to do that, because it's like a marathon. If you can run a marathon, then you can do the 100-meter dash and win the gold medal, So It's an interesting thing. Well, sir, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And like I said, don't throw anything away. That's all I'll say, without giving away too much and showing my hand before we do some decision making coming up in the near future. So, Stephen, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully all the tech works. And this interview will turn out to be one of the cooler ones we've done. Say hi to everybody in Wisconsin for me. And
right,
everybody at home, you know, stay home, stay safe, wear your masks. And hopefully we will be seeing each other, if not soon, but with the promise of seeing each other soon. So take care, and we'll see you next time here on Meet the 2020 Company.